Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I got a word today, and it's an interesting word, and it's going to probably surprise you a little bit. So the word is actually sabotage. And I looked it up like I rarely do, but I looked it up. It says an act or process tending to hamper or hurt. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, man, that's what my competitor does, right? That's what they're trying to tend to hurt me and hamper me. That's how we as entrepreneurs tend to think. Maybe it's the government that tends to hurt us. Maybe it's the environment. There's all these things that we tend to think about when we're talking about sabotage. Well, I found somebody that said that we can self-sabotage our business. And I'm like, no way, this is crap, right? And I'm like, well, should probably look at this. So I looked into it a little deeper. I'm like, I got to get this guy on my show. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Tomas Keenan. How are you today, sir?
Sir, I am great, doing well here. We talked a little bit about a clipped wing that I got right now, healing up from surgery, but overall, just moving and grooving, and just excited to be here and have a real good conversation with you and provide as much value as possible to those who listen.
Awesome. So cool. So you are founder of Step It Up Academy. So fill me in on what's Step It Up Academy.
Sure. It is my current business, and I've got a long lineage of successes and failures along the way. I started. It's a coaching and consulting mastermind.
Okay.
That's the basics. But to give you the backstory, I went down the rabbit hole of looking for some help in that area many years ago in some other businesses of mine, and started doing well with it and started getting good traction. And one thing leads to another. Other people start to take notice, and they start asking you questions. Hey, could you help me with this? Hey, could you put eyeballs on this? And I started doing it, and it was very fulfilling. It was not a transactional business like my last company was.
Sure. Yeah.
So the fulfillment piece of it is what basically kept me engaged and wanting more. And I said, you know what? Cool. I had an opportunity to go in and coach under someone else's organization for a couple of years. So I got to learn the business structure, learn what to do, what not to do,
Sure.
how to structure a good call, how to get good results with your clients. And then it was time for me to go do it for myself. And here we are, we Step It Up.
That's awesome. Dude, I tell you what, man, you and I have similar backgrounds. I started a company and then sold it. We did about 10 million in annual sales, had 22 people on my team, and I sold it because I absolutely fell in love with the coaching and consulting side, right? So did you own that electronics business? Was that yours? Were you always an entrepreneur then, or did you ever work for somebody, or how did that transition happen?
Yes, all of the above. I have, if you look back at my history, it's a cycle. I go and work for myself for a couple of years, and then I always, for some reason, I go and I work for someone else for 2 or 3 years.
Oh, okay.
I never made it past the 3-year mark working for another person or another company. Right. So cool. But yeah, the last company was Top Class Installations. We were a GPS tracking and dash camera installation company based out of New York. And I was a 50-50 partner in that company for 11 years and started it with my business partner in September 2009, right in the middle of, the Great Recession and all that housing disaster.
Yep.
And it was one of those times in history when, and it's funny because it's not funny, but every time that I seem to start a business, there's always some hoopla going on in the background with the economy and this, that, the other thing, right? And you always go and you sit down at the dinner table or Thanksgiving with the friends and the family. Hey, what's going on with you in your life? Well, I got this new great thing on it. Like, dude, you're crazy. There's too much crap going on right now in the world. It's not gonna work. It's gonna fail.
Yeah.
You know what? That has always been the fuel for me. Cool. You think I'm not gonna make it? I'm gonna tank this one. Yep. Awesome. Let's go. Game on.
Oh my gosh. Well, and it's fun to talk about this because there's a lot of people listening, Tomas, today that are in corporate America that really they kind of envy us because we're in for ourselves. And, I hear a lot of times, you get to set your own hours and you get to be your own boss and you get to do what you want. I'm like, I'm 0 for 3 on those because you work harder, customer sets your hours based on them, and they tell you what to do if you're doing your business right, in my mind. Again, it's just me. But do you have a preference of, do you like working for somebody or do you prefer working for yourself? What seems to be better for you as an individual?
I do well in both.
Okay.
I like running a team, right? So my last position, I was a COO of a large mastermind and coaching group here in Dallas, and I had full blown autonomy to pretty much run it how I saw fit, as long as we were hitting the numbers and the marks and the goals that we had set forth and whatnot. And it was very educational for me, right? And I had a great experience doing it. However, you still have to answer to somebody.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of being self-employed or the small business owner is, and it's almost a fallacy. Yeah, we don't have to answer anyone. That's BS.
Yep.
Most of us have a wife or a spouse at home that we have to answer to. We all have to answer to Uncle Sam, and
Yep.
whatever your faith may be, whether it may be spirituality or the big man upstairs, right? We have those answers that will always be with us. So I think if you go into it with a mindset like that, like no matter whether you're self-employed or you're working for someone, you're still going to have someone that you have to report or answer to at some point in time. You just have to be aware of it.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I don't know where that fallacy, like you said, comes in, but there's a lot of people that think that. So for those people that are in, or maybe they're contemplating that journey and thinking about it, what's kind of the first step that you would give as a suggestion if you and I were sitting at a bar and I was next to you and I was saying, hey, Thomas, I'm contemplating opening this business. I have no clue where to start. Where do you kind of give people that shove in that right direction? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. I probably won't give the traditional advice of go get the business cards, the LLC, the website,
Yeah.
all that stuff, right? Because you and I both know you don't need that to operate a business.
Yep.
Um, this is a really good question you ask. And if you asked me this question a couple of years ago, I'd probably give you a different answer. And I'm glad you're asking it today. My advice would be, all right, cool. Keep your steady corporate gig going because that's your cash flow, right? It's pretty much structured. It's set. It's coming in weekly or monthly, whatever your pay cycle is. If you're going to go and start a business or get involved in something, cool. Go get it running. And you may not even have to go through the whole LLC process just to make things go.
Yeah.
I would look into, and this is my opinion, because I've owned businesses that are monthly recurring revenue models versus, go hunt and kill kind of thing. And that's what you're going to eat.
Sure.
I would suggest that corporate person go find something, go build some monthly recurring revenue model. Because now business becomes much more predictable. If you've got that MRR, you can do projections and say, okay, well, if we continue this growth pattern in 6 months, recurring revenue is going to be 30 grand a month.
Yeah.
So if you can slowly and steadily build that recurring revenue model, when you get to the point where you're either just before or you're matching what you're bringing in from your corporate gig,
Sure.
cool. See you
Yeah.
later. And now let's go all in on the business.
Sure. Wow, that's cool. What do you tell the guy listening that's like, dude, no way, I'm jumping in, feet first. I'm just going to take the leap because again, we don't advocate one way or another. We just suggest that you do it in a way that makes sense for you. Because again, to your point, if you got a mortgage and 3 kids and 2 car payments and, all these things, the last thing you want to do is jump off and say, hey honey, guess what? I'm going to start a snow shoveling business in San Diego. It just doesn't seem to work out. And so I'm just curious, for the guy that wants to, or the girl that wants to jump in, what do you suggest to them?
You hit it on the head, right? It's like what's going on in your life right now? Are you solo? Are you single? Do you have a significant other? Do you have kids? Do you have responsibilities like that? Because I was that person who was my very first business. I was 20 or 21 years old, right? I was single. I didn't have kids. I still lived with my mom, so I didn't have to pay rent. I'm just being very transparent here.
Yeah.
So the whopping $300 cash I had to my name was enough to get going. And I went all in. I quit my job and I had a couple of 4-letter choice words for the guy I was working for at the time, which is not my finest moment as a human on the planet. And I went and I started a retail car audio shop because that's what I did back then.
Yeah.
And that was me literally jumping off the cliff and attempting to build on the way down. And I built and I built and I built, and I kept it somewhat floating around. And then we hit the 5-year mark and I hit the ground.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, there's this transition time in an entrepreneur's world where they're like working either in the business, they're in the business, they're in the business, they're delivering, they're installing, they're building, they're invoicing, they're doing all of that. And then there's this day that somebody says, hey, when are you going to start working on the business and not in the business? Probably a lot of us have heard that. Do you remember that time that kind of clicked for you? Was that around that 5-year mark for you, Thomas?
It was my second company, and we were about 5 or 6 years in when that finally clicked. I got to the point where I'm a big firm believer in life altering events, right? Getting married, having kids, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Possibly injuring yourself or having a near death experience. Those are life altering events. So was trying with my ex-wife at the time to basically get pregnant with baby number 1. And she comes to me a couple weeks later, hey, I'm pregnant. Cool. That right there was the spark to drive me to go do better. Because all right, here's a company, I'm making a couple $100,000 a year. So is my business partner, but there's 2 of us and we're working like dogs in the business.
Yeah.
And my ex-business partner was 10 years my senior. And I got to see the future version of me 10 years in the future, the way that he was busy at work and not as available with his kids as I wanted to be with mine.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was like, oh, hold on a second here. I know we have something. The potential in this company is great, but I'm also smart enough to realize I have enough self-actualization, self-realization to understand that I don't have the skill set or the knowledge to bring this company from where it is now to build it into an actual business that doesn't require us to push the buttons and pull the levers every day.
Sure.
And that was my first go at, hey, let's go find someone who's been there, done that, right? AKA coach, mentor, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Went and found the first business coach, and that guy just set me down this path and said, hey, these are some things you need to do. And I'll never forget, the guy's name was Richard. First day in his office, I walk in and we sit down at this conference room table, and he drops a book on the table and he goes, if you're going to work with me, you're going to read. And I was like, dude, I don't have time for that. Like, because I service-based business where we went to the customer's job site to do the work.
Sure.
I'm spending, I don't even know how many hours a week behind the windshield.
Yeah.
So I give him this excuse, and like any good coach, he's going to basically counter the excuse and say, well, here's your solution. He's like, you don't necessarily have to read. He goes, go download the damn audiobook. He goes, I'm not buying the audiobook for you too. I just bought you the paperback version.
Nice guy.
So yeah, hey, you know what? That's kind of what I needed at that point too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? A little bit of a hard ass in a good way. A little bit of push, a little bit of pushback on someone like me. And you know what? I ripped through that first book, and it reignited my love of learning.
Yeah.
And then it was game on. I couldn't consume enough at that point. And here's something too. You've probably experienced this too, right? You see all these people, all the gurus, all the influencers. Oh, you have to read 52 books a year, a book a week. Come on, man. That's a lot of reading, okay? And it's cool. I'm not knocking it if that's what you're capable of.
Yeah.
But what are you actually retaining, and what are you actually implementing from those books that you read?
Right.
I rather read 5 good books a year and implement as much as possible. And I guarantee you I'll be leaps and bounds ahead of the person who goes and reads 52 or 60 books a year.
Yeah. Wow, that's so true. And a couple of years ago, it was a situation for me, Thomas, where I was doing a book a month. That's about as clip as I could get. And I kind of wanted to wear it as a badge of honor, right? I thought that was pretty cool. And then I I looked at the book. It was interesting. I look at my bookshelf and I look at that book and I go, did I read that book or not? And I thought right at that spot, I'm like, man, this is not the deal here, right? It's not about the quantity of information you're taking in. So now I'm rereading things for a 3rd, 4th, 5th time, right? Because it's like, man, now at least for me, I love highlighting my book. So I'm always like just reading the highlighted parts. But yeah, I mean, that's crazy that people think that just consuming content is going to make something happen. And I'm just curious, like when you transitioned to that, you talked about having like a coach. Was that early on for you, having an outside influence, I'll call it, kind of
Yeah.
overseeing your progress?
It's something that I had a couple other people who I looked up to in the aftermarket car audio industry, and a couple of those guys, I mean, man, how come these guys blew their businesses up? And I watched this one dude start this company. He had it 5 or 6, 7 years out of Chicago, and hired a business coach consultant. This guy came in, they helped him rework everything inside the store. And the guy, him and his business partner were extremely talented, very high-end fabricators, right? Like this is a skilled trade that
Sure.
you have to go spend money. You got to spend years learning how to do it. I mean, you're working on $150,000 cars on a daily
Yeah.
basis. This is not just, Joe Schmo who's working at Best Buy to slap a radio in your car. And these guys were really at an extremely high level of what they were doing, what they were capable of. And their business coach came in and basically told them, like, look, if you guys really want to grow this business, if you want to sell and exit this business in X amount of years, like you're telling me you are,
Yeah.
we have to get you guys out of the shop. And that's a really tough pill to swallow
Yeah.
for people who are in a specialty
Yeah.
trade.
Yeah.
Doctors, lawyers, car audio guys, HVAC guys, the electricians, master electricians, right? Name the trade, they're going to face those troubles.
Oh, well, and I tell you what, these 9 words, nobody can do it as well as I can, is really like one of those business blind spots, but it's also can be a kiss of death.
Yes.
If you really, and again, if you want to keep your company to where you're that person and the growth never is there or there's very minimal, there's nothing wrong with that. Right. I'm not here to say you have to do it a certain way, but I think, Thomas, what we're saying is there's ways to 5x and 10x this stuff so that you're not doing all the work. But again, from early on, grandpa did it this way, great grandpa did it this way, right? Especially like in some of those trades that you're referring to, do you see that attitude pretty prevalent in the people that you run into?
Yep, it's still prevalent today, and it's one of the, it's a mindset shift that we have to help our people who come in and work with us on, right? It's a little bit of education. Hey, I'm going to challenge the way that you've been programmed from a young child, and I'm going to give you a different way to look at this. And
Yeah.
it's going to seem really counterintuitive at first, and it's not going to be smooth sailing. You're going to hit bumps in the road. You're going to screw things up. The people that you wind up delegating to, they're going to screw things up too. But guess what? That's how they learn. That's how
Yeah.
you learn. That's how you start to dial in the systems and the processes to make them better. And if you don't hit these hurdles and these roadblocks occasionally, then we can't make this better. And someone's not going to be able to take this over from you in the future.
Yeah.
So let's get through some of the BS. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be sunshine and rainbows, right? But let's make it happen. And if you have the tenacity to stick through this now, trust me, it's going to get better on the other side.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think coach sometimes can be a bad word. We as entrepreneurs, we don't think we need them. And I'm not here to say you are, and I always laugh when people ask me, do you think I need a coach? And I'm like, I don't know if you need a coach. I can tell you this, the guy named Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, they needed coaches. So you want to be in that elite air, then you make that call. But I wonder, it'd be great to see where a guy like Tiger Woods would be today if he would have refused strength coach, nutrition coach, psychological coach, swing coach, all of those people that surrounded him. I would love to see where he would be if he didn't have, that outside influence. So for anyone listening, if you're continually bucking that, that's fine. Just don't be mad when you're limited on your productivity and where you're headed. I mean, do you see that a lot of times where people are like, I got this, I don't need that type of thing? Do you get that?
I see it a lot. I definitely see it a lot. And I usually will have a conversation with them that goes like this, like, cool, look, I'm not saying you are not capable of doing this on your own, because you probably are, right? Most entrepreneurs, most small business owners, we're hard charging people. We're pretty sharp, and we're willing to just do the work and make things happen
Yep.
at any expense. Okay. And oftentimes that expense is time, and lots of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Do you want to go in and spend 6 months to figure this out? Or would you rather go hire someone, pay him 10 grand and get it done in 30 days?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I get it for brand new people just starting out and you don't have 10 grand, totally get it, right? But I used to think about this when if I was charging less, if somebody was charging me more per hour than I was charging my clients, then obviously there was an issue. But I found out pretty early that I was charging more per hour than people were charging me. So I'm like, well, the math doesn't even work here, Thomas. I mean, again, fictitious numbers, whatever, $500 an hour I'm getting, and I'm paying somebody $100 an hour. If my math is right, I'm making $400 an hour on this deal, right? I do that all day long. And so, that's where businesses that's where businesses grow. Did you early on, did you get that kind of realization to do it that way, or how did that come about for you?
It took me some time of actually getting in and doing the work with others to realize it. It
Yeah.
wasn't one of those things that came and smacked me from day one. I had to go into the trenches and do the work with the coaches to be like, okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
Now I understand. Here's something, and I don't know how it works with you and clients you work with, but this is something that happens all the time with what we do. I'm known as an operations guy, right? I like the back end systems, the processes, right? The sales and the marketing is cool and it's needed. You can't do business without it. But I find that most people drop the ball on the fulfillment side of the house. Okay. Because it's not sexy. The landing page and getting on the phone call and closing the guy, that's sexy, and it,
Yeah.
kicks your endorphins up and you get all happy and excited for it. Most people come to me because they want help on the back end of the house. All right, fine, cool. I'm gonna come in. Let's look at everything. We'll go through it all. And I can't market my coaching this way because nobody would sign up and come work with me. Okay. So yes, people come in and we work on the business, right? What I'm also doing, and this is also done to me, and I didn't know it was going on at the time until it was too late, and it was a good thing, by the way. Um, I had one coach who spent a ton of time working on me along with the business.
Sure.
And he phrased it to me this way, and I've copied it, and I say it to my clients to this day. Look, you're going to come in here, and I'm going to help you dial in your back end, your systems, your processes. We're going to get things in place. If you don't have a CRM, we can point you in the right direction. Whatever it may be. I can help build your business to this level, right? But if you're here, the individual, you'll never be able to operate the business that's here.
Yeah.
So now it's my excuse me, it's my duty and obligation as your coach to bring you up to the level that the business is at now.
Yeah.
Right. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to dive into the personal side of the house, sir.
Yeah.
What does your day look like? What are you putting in your pocket? And I'm not a fitness coach. I'm by no means, like, it's not what I do. But I've been involved in the self-development space for so long that I know that everything is interconnected. Are you taking care of yourself?
Sure.
What does the alcohol intake look like? What does the
Yeah.
food intake look like? Are you moving your body?
Yeah.
Right? Are you spending time with the spouse? Are you spending time with the kids? Intentional time, right? Or you have your face buried in this thing called the smartphone that's in your pocket 24/7.
Oh
Right.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. Now you just pissed off half the people, Thomas. So let's take a break and then we'll get them we'll talk them off the ledge here when we come back.
Got it.
Okay, so here's the cool thing is you're the operations side. My whole life and existence is on the sales side, right? So there's always this war between operations and sales, right? Because you guys sit and you do the easy stuff. We got to go do the damn hard stuff, right? And then you think, oh my gosh, these guys are all golfing. So what the heck? We're doing all the heavy lifting back here. So I love to be able to look at things from both sides like that. That's so cool, right? But where does the sabotage come in here? Because we started with that, and I want to make sure that we really unpack that in the second part of this, because I don't want people to blame anybody else and when there is potential things going on internally. Like you said, man, you know what? If you're spending 20 hours a day at the office and you can't remember your kid's middle name or his birthday or whatever, that's a problem, and I don't know why it's so hard for us. And I struggle with that. It cost me a marriage. I don't know why in the world that is such a blind spot for people. So what have you seen in that when you start sharing that with people? Are they pretty resistant or are they pretty open?
A little bit of both. Depends where they are in their own journey.
Yeah.
Some people who've experienced it and started to go down the path to better things, they're like, ah, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've seen that before. I'm glad I
Yeah.
made some changes. And then you have the other side of the house where they're just like, oh, I had no idea I was being that guy or that girl.
Right.
Society glorifies us, especially in American culture, just working 24/7, grind, 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 grind. It's burn the midnight oil. And like I did that for years.
Yeah.
You know, um, I was married to my ex. We were living. I'm from New York originally. We're living in New York, Long Island, and I think we had 3 kids in total. We had 3 kids at the time. My first daughter was born, and then we went for number 2 and popped out twins. Right,
Mm.
so it was complete pandemonium for a good
Oops.
3 or 4 years with those little ones running around the house.
Yep.
I remember, service-based business, home-based business too. So the office was at home,
Oof.
and what was the office or what became the office was one of the kids' rooms at the time. So the office at that point in time was the kitchen table. Right, we've all done it. The kitchen table's the office, and we kind of cleared some room to sit down and eat dinner. And one kid's throwing spaghetti, and one kid's got macaroni and cheese all over their face. And I'm sitting here, and the phone is next to me at the dinner table, next to my plate, and it keeps buzzing. Zzz, 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 and every 2 seconds, I'm picking it up because like I'm just in this react
Yeah.
state of a business owner. And I pick it up for the 4th or 5th time as I'm, eating my food. I look over at my then wife, and she's literally holding her face, and she's crying. She's hysterical crying at the dinner table. And right then it was, oh, yeah, you messed up, dude. Right, you messed up.
Yeah.
And it took going that far, that deep into the BS that I created, by the way,
Yeah.
for me to realize what I was doing. And then it was like, oh, okay, so let me back off. And I was already in the self-development space, working with some coaches and stuff at the time, and went in and just had some conversations. So this is a form of self-sabotage, by the way. And there's many different forms of self-sabotage as a small business owner or an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. Right.
Wow.
But I was banging it up at home terribly because I was too focused on the business because nothing else mattered. We give ourselves these BS excuses like, well, I got to put time into the business because the business is what provides for the family and provides for the wife, provides for the kids, and pays for the 2 cars in the driveway and the food for the dog.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to spend all your time buried in that business, and you're going to let your kids grow up without a dad, without being involved in their lives, like you said, without possibly knowing their middle names on occasion because you're too damn busy. Like, when are you going to hit the pause button and say, you know what, the business isn't the most important thing?
Yeah.
Yes, it's important. Yes, this is what creates the livelihood that we have here. It brings in the money and the finances, but it's not everything. I'll end this. I'll end it with this.
Yeah.
I had a coach who told me for the longest time. I worked with this guy for about 3 years, which I think in the coaching space, working with someone for 3 years is a good clip. It's longer than most people do. This guy's still a dear friend to this day, and he basically told me, I lost my train of thought. Jesus Christmas. Uh, yeah, here it is. He told me the more that I systematized the business, the less I would have to show up and work and the more money I would make.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I was like, no way, man. Because my mind is set on exchanging time for money.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how we're programmed as kids.
Yeah.
That's how we're programmed in the school system, in my opinion. Now you show up, you work that first hourly job at McDonald's, and
Yeah.
you track your hours and you're paid this much money. Well, coming into the small business ownership world, we think the same thing. And maybe you're billing by hour, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there comes a point in time where if you dial in the business and you train your people, you hire people, right? And I call it the G3 method. It's one of the things we train people on,
Sure.
right? And it's you have to get it done, you have to get it documented, then you can get it delegated. That's G3, and it's a formula for scaling, in my opinion, too, right? Once you start doing this, it allows you to step out of the day-to-day operations of the company, right? So now you can start playing checkers instead of chess
Yeah.
with the company. You can start managing things from a 30,000-foot view, get really strategic, start future planning, right? Start really mapping things out, thinking abundantly, and it's almost magical what winds up happening. You work less hours, and all of a sudden the gross revenue, gross profit of the company starts skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I had no idea that was going to happen. Meanwhile, someone's been telling you for 3 years that this is what's going to happen if you do it this way.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and a lot of that's the mindset, right? Is you live wherever you want, wherever your brain tells you. And the research that I've done, Thomas, is our brain's number one function is to protect us, which is the reason why we don't stick a fork in our eye when somebody says, "Hey, stick a fork in your eye right now." Our brain says, "Absolutely not." But then when we go and try to do that, don't charge by the hour, right away. That's as bad as sticking a fork in my eye, because my brain's like, "What are you, nuts?" So we really have to get that clarity, for our future to be able to understand that. Was that hard? Was that a hard lesson for you? I mean, I'm assuming in the electronics, you're charging extra speakers, extra equalize, you have like a price sheet. Was it hard to transition from that into this different mindset for you?
Yeah, it was, because at the time we had got out of the car audio space. We were doing GPS tracking, and we were subcontractors for big companies.
Okay.
So we were working for Verizon, AT&T, and a couple other smaller ones that no one's probably ever heard of. And we had to sign a contract with them. And hey, they would go out. It was a beautiful model. The big corporate company would handle the marketing, the sales. We would show up and put the hardware in the vehicle, and they would then take care of the customer on the back end, as far as the software implementation was concerned.
Sure.
So when we signed on with them, we would sign a contract that would say, hey, basic 3-wire tracking device is this much money per install. Dash camera is this much money per install, regardless of the vehicle. And for those people who are listening who don't get that, some vehicles are very simple to work on, and others, you stick the fork in your eye.
Sure.
But it tends to average out over the course of the year.
Sure.
Right? If you're getting paid, let's say $55 for a basic 3-wire GPS install, it takes you 30 minutes to go do it. All right, cool. That's $110 an hour. But it isn't always that simple. It isn't always that cut and dry.
Especially if you got to drive, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And that's such a hard philosophy. And so I'm just curious, as we start to land today, you have two things that are really going on powerful. You have the Step It Up Entrepreneur podcast, where you just hit your 200th episode in October. Congratulations on that. Kind of fill the listener in, because obviously the listeners are podcast consumers. So what's going on at your podcast there for somebody listening today, Thomas?
We're moving and grooving, man. I got some excellent guests recently. We just had Sean Clark, who is the founder and CEO of Go High Level, which is probably the most popular CRM on the planet right now.
Oh, great.
Had him on, which is fantastic. I like to get high-level entrepreneurs on who've done some real stuff in life and in business to come on and share their experiences. And I've done a bunch of solo episodes in between as well. Every so often, I'll get a good hit, good ideas like, oh, you know what? I got to go record this, and I'll kick it out. But mostly it's interviews with other people who've done some really cool things. And we talk about the way that I structure it, similar to what you got going on here. I like to have an open, direct, and authentic conversation with the guest who comes on. Yeah. I don't plan it. Yeah, I have them fill out a form and stuff, so it gives me some back-end information so the podcast team can produce it.
Right.
Cool, that's great. But when I show up, I look at it and I have the conversation with the guests when they come on. It's like, hey, Dave, look, we're about to hit the record button, right? And I want you to think of this interaction as if you and I were at a bar having a beer, or at the coffee bar having a cup of coffee, just kind of shooting the breeze and getting to know each other a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's it. Boom. We're going to talk for 45 minutes or so and just pull some really great content. And it's been really powerful. And you've probably experienced this too. There is no barrier of entry to become a podcast host today. However, those who stick to it and stick with it, like you and I have, because you told me you're just about to hit 200 episodes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. My research, because when my 200th episode came out, I hit the Googles and I said, how many episodes does the average podcast host get to? Yeah. And it's 3 or less. Yeah.
I know.
Crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm just excited for it. I love having the guests on. It's one of those things where, we kind of we schedule out a bunch of recordings. We'll record 9, 10 within a month, and then take a break for a couple of weeks and go do life.
Gotcha.
And then come back to it and get more in the bank and go from there.
Sure. That's so cool. So yeah, if you're listening, it's Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. So can't wait to check that out. And you also authored a book. Now I'm just going to tell people up front, be careful on the word because it's a naughty word. So why don't you share with us what the name of your book is and what that's about?
Sure. Yeah. The book title is Unfuck Your Business. And it's funny, I got that hair to write a book a couple years ago. Reached out to an editor, had conversations with her, and she's like, yeah, you definitely got a book in you. So we started this process. And I wound up writing the book, and it has a lot to do with the experiences that I've lived both personally as well as business. And I openly talk about the failures that I've had in business,
Yeah.
some of the struggles that we've had. One of the biggest challenges that I've had, I don't know about how you feel about this, making money in business hasn't really been that difficult of a challenge. People have been the challenge.
Yep.
Hiring people, dealing with people, getting the people trained and keeping them engaged and implementing culture into the company. That's where I challenged or struggled for the longest time.
Yep.
So cool. How do we write a book here that teaches lessons around how I have implemented this successfully in my company at the time? And since then, I've gone on to do it in two other companies, which is really cool.
Cool.
But yeah, that's the main gig. Was like, hey, if I had to start a business 10 years ago, what was the book that really would have helped me kickstart things and come out of the gate hard charging?
That's
And that was the
awesome.
book that I attempted to put together.
Sure. That's so cool. Well, just this last weekend, I was up in Monterey, California at a speaking event, and I was one of the breakout speakers there. And, we were talking about employee engagement, and this is in a group of highly skilled engineers. And we had the lowest group attendance out of all of them. And the guy stopped me in the middle of the group and he said, there was a small number of people in the room. He said, this is crazy. He said, right now there's other breakouts talking about the business and about the product and all the technical stuff. And he said, there's a small group of us in this room right here that are so concerned about our company that they're focusing on the engagement of the employee over the other pieces. To your point, man, we can have the best run machine. We can have the perfect, warranty product that will never break, never do anything. If we don't have the people to do any of the work, we're done. It's just like sales, So, the sales and the team, see, operations is at the bottom again, dude. I'm just telling you that sales are way better here. Just had to get my cheap shot in there for you.
That's good, man.
But that's so crazy how that's so far down. Our team is so far down the list. That's why I wrote my book, Growing on Purpose, because they're strengthening the research out there about a strong team is just got to be told to the world.
Yeah, it's a game changer. And when you dial in and get the right team, it's magical what happens.
Yep.
Really is.
Love it. Yeah, that's so cool. So, hey, last question here, Thomas, and I'm gonna let you go. For somebody listening, what would your tip of the day be if we just had a few seconds left at that bar and maybe we covered it, maybe we didn't, and we're sitting there and you just wanted to make sure that you imparted to the world one chunk of information, what would that be?
Yeah, take care of you first. Be selfish. Like,
Wow.
seriously, be selfish. And that's so counterintuitive of what society tells us to do.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, when I started to become intentionally selfish, I don't mean that it's not a bad thing either.
Right.
Right. I mean selfish. I mean, take care of you first thing in the morning, wake up, stretch, exercise, put some good fuel into your body, right? Drink some water. If you're going to do some mindset work or meditation, cool, whatever you're into, breath work, I don't care. Go do something.
Yeah.
That's for you to figure out. I'm not going to tell you what to go do. But when you start pouring into you first thing in the morning, and it's not going to happen overnight, everything else in your life will get better.
Wow,
everything.
That's so cool. I have a client, Thomas, that lives on a lake and has a boat and only has gotten out on the lake once this year because he's so busy with everything else. And I'm just like, dude, give me the boat then. Okay. Why don't you just give me the keys? Because, the thing's sitting there, whether it's your family, whether it's your personal life, whatever, boy, we're so, like you said, out of balance right now. That I'm so glad that that's how we're ending this is, be selfish in a positive way, find something for yourself that you really want to do, even today, even if it's 5 minutes. I mean, it's crazy. In the airport in California, I was like looking around, everybody's on their phone. I mean, this thing is like glued to everybody. And there's a small group of people that are just sitting out watching the planes. Right. And I'm like, man, if just sit and watch a plane for once, it's just so cool. So thank you for sharing that, Thomas. If somebody's listening and they want to learn more about you, they want to connect, they want to understand more about the Step It Up Academy, what would be the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, real simple. Go to connectwiththomas.com. There's no H in Thomas, it's actually Tomas. So connectwiththomas.com. That right there is a webpage that has links to everything that I have. Websites, social media accounts, links to my book, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. And thank you so much for all that you're doing. Man, I can't wait to start listening to your podcast. And I'm going to grab a copy of the book. I got two ahead of you, so it might be a little while. So, but thank you again so much for hanging out, and can't wait to keep learning from you.
Yeah, this has been great. I really appreciate your time today.